What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the J Area Podcast. My name is Jose Ramos Jr. And if you're new to the podcast, please subscribe, like, and share these videos or these podcast episodes, which you can find on Spotify, to help grow the podcast itself. On this podcast, you will see me talk about many things, including sports and entertainment, as they are two aspects that I've constantly been speaking about with friends and family. And I take note of this opportunity to speak to all of you about the very same concepts and topics that I would talk to them. Mainly, for this episode, I will be concentrating on the NBA All-Star Weekend that had taken place just a couple days ago, this past weekend. And a lot of controversy had been stirred up from analysts and pundits like a Stephen A. Smith or a Shannon Sharp, who believe that the All-Star Weekend event needs to be revamped or scrapped altogether. Now, in recent years, we have seen a lack of effort from a lot of the All-Stars. And for example, in the All-Star game itself, the East had defeated the West by a great margin, but that wasn't the headline. The headline was the East being able to break the record for most points scored in a game with 211. Now, looking at the roster, we had a couple friends come over and watch the All-Star game with us, and we thought that the West was stacked. I mean, you had guys like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Nikola Jokic, Stephen Curry, Luka Doncic, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. I could keep going on. Hall of Fame caliber names and talent. Guys who have been NBA champions or have been in the NBA Finals. So we thought, for sure, the West should be able to run away with this, given that the East was surrounded by young guys like a Scotty Barnes, like a Paolo Banchero. But that wasn't the case. The East just shot the lights out. Nothing but three-pointers. And every time the West would try to inch closer and closer by cutting the lead down, another three. Namely by guys like Tyrese Halliburton, who was the hometown hero for the Indiana Pacers, and the eventual All-Star MVP, back-to-back three-point champion, Damian Lillard, who... It was very interesting to see him on the east side of the game because we're so used to him playing on the Blazers on the west side. And a funny thing too, during that broadcast, I didn't realize that on that team, Damian Lillard was technically the old head. This is a guy who has relatively been seen as one of the younger stars, certainly one with the most potential, especially when it comes to his shooting range. But yeah, on that Eastern team, he was one of the older guys along with a Giannis Antetokounmpo, his teammate from Milwaukee. I do think they have to add some sort of incentive to the All-Star game, or they'd have to change it up. This was the first year that they would return back to the West versus East format since 2017, because between 2018 and last year, we had that format of like a playground draft where you get to choose your players, you get to choose your team. And it had that one format of accumulating so many points and then going to the fourth quarter where you had a set number to hit. I thought that was an interesting distinction and innovation that they added to the All-Star game. I do think it's probably best to go back to the East versus West just to make it a little more simpler and fun, especially now with a lot of the talent kind of being on both sides. I want to say balanced. Obviously, the West I thought was way more stacked, but that wasn't the case. The East ultimately emerged victorious. I've seen some people make suggestions. If the winner of the West versus East, the winner will receive the home court advantage in the NBA Finals. And that's an interesting point. But I don't think that's really necessary. I don't see it working long term, especially given teams who aren't really in the hunt or deemed title contenders. What does that do for them? What does that do for an Orlando Magic who has Banchero on the All-Star team? That doesn't do anything for them. In recent years, those guys weren't title contenders. And granted, their season has been going well, but we've also seen in recent years that they start good and then they just fall off. That's not to say they'll fall off this year, but it's just an example. Especially for teams who have been vying all season for a winning record and to earn that number one seed and to put that in the hands of other individuals, for example, their rivals. I don't think it has legs. I don't think it has longevity. I don't think that's the way to go. I have seen somewhere where they want to up the payout for the team that wins. But then you have arguments made by like a Stephen A, by like a Charles Barkley, these guys are making millions of dollars already. Why do you have to add incentive to it? The changes that could be made, everyone has an opinion on it. Everyone believes that they have an idea on it. I like the idea of the All-Star weekend and being able to see so many stars come together and join up and seeing pairings that we haven't seen ever, or that we thought we would never see. Rivalries, like when Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook broke away from OKC, and then seeing them having to coexist on the same team one year. Little aspects like that are very interesting. But I'm now adapting and adopting that mindset that maybe they should scrap it. Maybe it has run its course. Again, I'm sure there's a way they can adjust it and retool it and fix it. But they have a year. They do have a year to fix that and address that. I know next year it's going to be taking place in the Chase Center of San Francisco, California, home of the Golden State Warriors. But I think the main concern lies on Saturday night, the Saturday night events. The three-point contest you don't have to touch. The three-point contest has been consistently one of the more entertaining and fun aspects of NBA All-Star Weekend, where the great shooters of the NBA just shoot their hearts out. And especially with the inclusion of Sabrina versus Steph, I thought that was a fun little detour that they took on Saturday night. I don't think a lot of people expected Steph Curry to lose, but for Sabrina to come out and shoot the way she did, given that she was shooting from the men's 3-point line, I thought that was very impressive. I thought it was a great way to share spotlight on the WNBA and their potential and their star power, because certainly they have star power as well. But I think, and not only that, but the fact that she was able to put up 26 points that would have helped her advance to the finals of this year's 3-point contest is impressive in itself. And I think a lot of people made note of that. And I think that we should do more things like that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Steph versus Sabrina, although they could run it back. I'm sure people would be interested in that. But to do other side quests and other kind of side events that would help bring more attention to the weekend. I remember one year Draymond Green and Kevin Hart had themselves a shootout as well, a 3-point shootout. So little things like that I think are always fun. The skills challenge itself was pretty funny, and not for the right reasons. But you had so many of these guys. It was 3 teams of 3. You had the rookies, you had the All-Stars, and you had the hometown team, the Indiana Pacers. And excuse me, not the rookies. The rookies were the number 1 picks. So you had like a Victor Wembanyama, the Anthony Edwards. And a lot of guys were making the same mistake of not knowing where to go on the obstacle course. And I think Kenny Smith and Reggie Miller had made an excellent point where like these guys aren't paying attention. They're not watching the person ahead of them go, which says a lot about what's going on with All-Star Weekend. There's just a lack of care. They don't care. And I think Stephen A. and Shannon Sharp made up a great point where people want to have that accolade. They want to have that recognition of being an all-star. It's an honor to be an all-star. The all-time greats in the NBA have been all-stars. But when it comes to the weekend, they don't want to participate like an all-star. And that's not me trying to criticize their effort, but we as fans, we as the consumers, we can see the difference. We can tell when a Nikola Jokic or a Luka Doncic aren't as invested in an all-star game as they would be in a regular season game. I mean, you could see the lack of effort. And do I blame them? Not at all, because at the end of the day, this game holds no bearing over their regular season record, holds no bearing over their regular season stats. So I don't blame them. But again, as the consumer who is investing my time, my effort, my money into this, it's not really something I want to take part in. And that brings us to the dunk contest. The dunk contest, if it wasn't for Mac McClung, I think would have been one of the major disappointments of the season. Mac McClung had good dunks. They weren't as good as his dunks as last year, the previous dunk contest. But they were still creative enough to where I kind of left thinking, okay, like that was cool. But aside from him, no, that wasn't it. And to be fair, it's like I said earlier about time running its course. What more can they do? The dunk contest has been going on for 30 plus years. We've seen so many innovative dunks, and we're now at the point where people are just, you know, retooling and paying homage to previous dunk contest champions or participants. We saw Jaylen Brown attempt to do a tribute to D Brown that I thought was a failure at all aspects, because number one, he's trying to jump over Kai Cenat, who isn't the tallest person, and he's sitting down, and all he did was jump over him and dunk it, and then already on his way down is now trying to hit the dab, or kind of blind himself to hit that dunk. In theory, it would have been cool, but the execution, it wasn't the best. I don't think, and it's like you said, I can't put fault on any of these guys, because at the end of the day, these events carry no bearing over their careers, over their regular season stats. But the last great dunk contest was obviously Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon, where like those guys were creative. Jaylen Brown is a guy who can dunk with power, but you want to talk about creativity. Gordon versus LaVine might be the last great dunk contest we've ever seen. And it's a shame that we haven't been able to not even just match that energy, but just stay in that realm. If we could just stay in that realm of creativity and the dunking prowess that they brought, in the competitive nature, because they had to keep going because they were hitting 50s and 50s. That dunk contest was out of this world. It's something that I think many people will look back at as one of the great dunk contests, certainly in modern era, the greatest dunk contest, I want to say. But I think a lot of people have pointed this out too. This is the lack of star power. You look at a guy like LeBron James, never made a dunk contest. And before him, you had big stars, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dr. J. All these guys made the dunk contest. They were in there. LeBron never did. And there were some years where he would say, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it. And he never did it. He never did it. And it goes back to preference. You didn't have to. But my thing is, if you don't intend on doing it, or you don't want to do it, don't publicly say like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it. Or, hey, I'm thinking about doing it. It's like, just don't. Just don't say that, because then you're raising expectations and you're bringing up people's hopes that you're going to do something when you're not. And like I said, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. No one's going to force you. But it's just that intent on putting it out there and not doing it. There's people who talk about it, and there's people who be about it. And he would talk about it. I definitely think that that's what the dunk contest lacks. Jaylen Brown was the biggest star there. But obviously Mac McClung, a guy who's not even on an NBA roster. He's in the G League. And that's not a knock on him. But it's like, just think about that. That there's players out there who could be in the dunk contest and rather not be, or they might be injured or not available. But our back-to-back champion is in the G League. Much respect to him, because he took the opportunity and he ran with it, and now he's a back-to-back champion. But if I'm in the NBA and I'm on a roster and I'm thinking, if he can do it, why can't I do it? But I mean, that's just me. Regardless, I'm hoping that they make some kind of revamp or some kind of touch up on these events or on the game itself, because it's something I look forward to every year, especially because, as I mentioned, it's a way to get all the big stars together and have them in a collaborative effort to give something to the fans to look forward to. But in recent years, it hasn't really lived up to the name, and it hasn't lived up to the hype. But the NBA is coming back around. The Golden State Warriors, who everyone knows is my favorite NBA team, they have the Denver Nuggets coming up pretty soon. So we'll be covering them and seeing how they are doing. In other news, we also have a little bit of Marvel news coming up. I know I mentioned the Deadpool trailer. Very interested in seeing that. It's going to be the only movie that Marvel releases this year, which is something that a lot of people, again, criticized Marvel for doing, is overproducing and including so many movies on their time slot and on their schedule. It'll be the first movie in a long time that we see, and it'll be the last one we see in a while, which I think is a smart move. I think quality over quantity is always more of a priority. You want to be able to put out your best content on a consistent basis, but also not overdo it, because everything just gets watered down and it gets convoluted, and it could be confusing for some people who don't keep up. I mean, you look at the overproduction of the MCU, the Disney Plus series, and you had so many shows coming off: WandaVision, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and that's just to name a few, that some people were getting lost in the sauce. They were getting a little bit confused about what was going on in the timeline. And on top of that, you had other movies coming out. You had Shang-Chi, The Eternals, Spider-Man, Black Panther, and some of those movies were better than others. But again, when you start overproducing and really losing track of your management, and when I say management, I don't mean like the upper executives, but I mean managing of story, managing of time, managing of efficiency. That's a big thing. And I think that's a common theme in this week's episode is management. And I'll get to that in a moment. But with Deadpool, a lot of that's also opening the door for the X-Men to come in, because Marvel had acquired the rights to their X-Men characters a couple of years ago, and are now being able to bring them forward into the product now. So I'm very interested to see how they grow that, how they introduce that, and what they do moving forward to keep it fresh. You know, I mentioned management, and I talked about how this podcast would kind of be like an inside mind or an inside look in my mind on how I view things and how things have been going. And I know I'm not the only one that might struggle with it, but like time management, there's so many things that we want to do and so little time to do it. I know I find myself having to balance a lot of things on my plate, whether it's my own personal relationships with my family members, my friends, the podcast, obviously. I have a job outside of this, my own personal time, health, stuff like that. We all struggle to find that balance, but I think ultimately what's so rewarding is being able to juggle all these things at once and feel like you're doing something right. There's many times where I might have self-doubt, and there's many times when I feel like we all criticize ourselves, and I can speak for myself in saying that I'm my own biggest critic, and that's why I've been so open with this podcast. A lot of people would tell me how, like, aren't you worried about what people are going to say or what people think? And it's like, personally, I don't. Before I would, but I've now reached this point in my life where ultimately I only care about the opinions of a few people, and those are the ones that matter to me most. That's not to say I don't hear or see everything that people are saying. I do take that into account. And I feel like what we all should be able to do is learn to take criticism better than we take compliments. Anyone can give out a compliment, and it's all about how you react to it, right? If I receive a compliment, I'll say thank you, I appreciate that, and I'll try to reciprocate it. But it's the criticism that I look forward to, because it's a way for me to grow. It's a way for me to improve. And that's what I look forward to in this podcast, and seeing the comments and seeing, again, the criticism or the feedback that I may receive, because I want to be able to improve and grow this into something that we all can enjoy, certainly something that I look forward to in terms of producing. So that would be one of my biggest advices for anyone that's listening out there, is learn to be your biggest critic, but also don't be afraid to hear other people's feedback. And I know for me growing up, I had that sense of insecurity because I had a great pride and protection over whatever I was producing, whether it was schoolwork, whether it was my own hobbies, whether it was the podcast early on. But you have to know that that feedback can be so vital and so crucial to your growth. And as long as you know what you want to do, how you want to do it, and remember why it is that you want to do it, the only thing stopping you is you. And I think that's something that a lot of people nowadays struggle with, especially with online culture and how society presents itself, in that we have to be ultra productive, or that some people are finding success faster or easier than other people are, myself included. I've seen a lot of times where some of my friends or other people that I might not know, but I can see their content growing. And it's a learning process. life has always been a learning process. And so what you do is you take your hits and you keep moving forward. And that's all it can be. That's something I want to also include on this podcast, is just life advice. And if at any time, if someone is looking for advice or they want to share something, like, please do. Because ultimately I feel like it's our duty and it's our obligation to help each other out. I think that's what we were put on this earth to do, is to leave it a better place than the way that we found it. And I don't know. That's my 2 cents on that bit. In other news, I'll share a personal story because I thought this was really funny, and the person that this happened to probably won't like it, so I won't share who it was. But over this last week, I have known somebody that was in a little bit of a car accident. Luckily, it wasn't serious. It wasn't, fatal or anything like that. It was just a small little clip. They were on one side of the street, and they were trying to jump 3 different lanes to get to be able to turn left, if that makes sense. But on their way, again, jumping lane to lane, an oncoming car coming behind them, they just happened to clip them. So that person's front headlight and the other person's back tail light just kind of, clashed a little bit. Again, luckily, no one was hurt. Everyone's okay. Even the cars, they're not even that damaged. It was just a real minor accident. Everyone is okay that was involved. And I get a call in the morning, maybe about 7-8 o'clock in the morning, from this person. So naturally, I pick up the phone, and I don't hear their voice. All I hear is a conversation between them and the other driver. And I hear the other driver, and very calmly, very caringly, it was an older woman, was just telling them, let's just go ahead and pull over to the side here and we'll take a look. And immediately I knew. I was like, okay, they were in an accident. Either they got hit or they hit someone. But regardless, you can tell in the tone of their voices and just the context clues of the conversation. You just knew, okay, they were in an accident. So I'm on the phone with this person. And finally, they kind of break away from their conversation and they're telling the other person, hey, I'm on the phone with this guy. And I'm talking to them. I say, hey, are you okay? I know what happened. I can tell. Is everyone okay? That's the first thing you have to ask. Is everyone okay? They said, yeah, everyone's fine. This is what happened. They re-explained the situation. And I said, okay, where are you? They let me know where they're at. I said, I'm on my way. I get up. I get dressed. I put on my shoes. I'm going out to my car. And once I jump in my car, right, I got everything situated. And I have push to start. I have a push to start car. And I push to start and it stalls. And I keep in mind, I'm still on the phone with this person. And they're like, are you on your way? And I said, I'm on my way. And I went to go push to start and it stalls. And I'm thinking, no way. My battery's dead. And I knew this. I knew it was on its way to dying because the day before I was at work. And I pushed to start and I noticed it did stall. It turned on when I was at work, but it did stall. So I was like, okay, I'm due for a battery. And I thought, okay, I'll get it tomorrow or whenever I get a chance. So that morning I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get to this person when my car is dead? And it's not like I could take my brother's car because his is in the garage. My car's directly behind him. So there's no way, unless he wanted to help me push it out to get to his car. So here I am thinking, there's no way. Finally, after kind of pushing it a couple more times, not overdoing it, but just to the point where I'm like, okay, it's got to work at least once, right? And just like Marty McFly in Back to the Future, I yell, start, and it starts. And I'm like, we're off and running. So I get in the car and I drive over to them. Again, the lady was super sweet. She was very caring and very respectful. She could tell that this person hadn't been driving for too long. And I thanked the woman. I said, hey, they kept me on the phone the whole time. And I heard your guys' conversation. And I want to thank you for handling it the way you did. Because if it was anybody else, you've seen people with road rage. You've seen people with just no sense of decency and humanity. they didn't have any malintent. They exchanged informations, in terms of insurance, phone number, and again, they're still currently in the process of handling that. But that gave me a little bit of hope, for people, that this person who's still a relatively new driver went through that experience, and we've all been through that experience. I've gotten in a hit before. First of all, I got in a rear end before, and yeah, no, that one really sucked, because I had a Mazda, a 2006 Mazda, which was like my first official car that I really liked, and I had these stickers on it, and I got rear-ended at a stop sign, because I'm willing to guarantee you they were on their phone and they weren't paying attention, and they hit me, and my brother and my sister were in the car, and the damages didn't seem that bad, but they were bad enough to where they had to total my car, and that's never fun. And at that rate, I think I had been driving for maybe 3 or 4 years. I've been driving for a while. But I'll tell you right now, I was not at fault. I will not take that. Usually, I'll be the kind of guy where I'm like, okay, no, like it was on both of us. No, that one was not on me. I will not take credit for that. I will not take the fall for that. That was 100% on them. And I remember we had to go to this location where they can take a look at the car to give us an estimate in terms of like what it would be to repair the car, or if it would just be totaled. And I remember that the individual who had hit me was the appointment prior, and they walked away scot-free. Their car didn't need to be totaled, could have been repaired fine. And then I go through mine, and it has to be totaled. And I'm like, well, that's great. That's fantastic. Luckily, in both instances, nobody was seriously hurt, which is, again, ultimately the most important thing. But recognizing just the class that everyone handled it in, that was really impressive. And like I said, it could have been anybody else, and it could have been a worse situation. But thankfully everything was okay. And now thinking about it, about how this older woman had handled it, just brings me back to my job. For those who don't know, I currently work in the dining room of a retirement community as a server. That is my job on the side from this. So you might be hearing stories every now and then about my adventures there. And a lot of them are very nice. A lot of them are very wise, and they treat us with respect. And we kind of build this kinship and this friendship with a lot of them. I'll say mainly for myself. I'll speak for myself as I only can. Nothing but respect and admiration for a lot of them. But there are those who you might catch on a bad day, because they can be cranky. They can be hangry, and I mean, I don't blame them for that. I won't say 100% it's all their fault, because it's not. I will say there are some days where maybe we're short-staffed, or maybe we're lacking in effort on the behalf of other people, but there are certain individuals, and if you're listening to this and you have worked with me at this location, you could resonate. You know that there are those who are a little bit more dramatic than others. I will speak on one individual this past week where he was waiting for his meal. He and his lady friend, they are not married, but they are companions, as they would like to say. And the kitchen was running a little slow. Granted, we had not received their food ticket yet, because my responsibility that day was just running out plates. We had not received their order yet, and this man proceeds out of nowhere, unprovoked, unsolicited. He just starts yelling out, "Help me, help me," and it's like banging on the table. And like a lot of people are thinking he's having some kind of attack, or he's having some kind of episode. And one of our employees is as working at the host podium where the phone is, and they're getting ready to call 911, or getting ready to call some kind of help, because of how this individual starts screaming. And he's complaining. Like, people come over and they approach him, and people are complaining, why is he screaming? Why is he making a big deal? And so as they approach him, they say, or he says, he says, "We've been waiting for so long for our food." Keep in mind, we haven't received the ticket I still don't know to this day where that ticket was. We never saw the ticket. That's not to put any blame on the server. I don't know. It got lost in the shuffle, got lost in the sauce. I don't know. But my thing is, that's just so embarrassing to start screaming about. And as I'm delivering other people's plates, they would tell me, like, careful around him. You know, he's screaming all over the place. Like, make sure you're careful. Like, as if he's gonna threaten to attack me. And granted, that doesn't happen. We've never had someone attack an individual at my job. But it's just the perception that you place upon yourself based on your actions. And it's a shame. It really is. Eventually, he did receive his meal, which I don't know why. It wasn't even that far after he received the meal. It's all about patience. That's all it is, man. Like, if he had been waiting for a while, okay, I'll give you that. But we don't even know. Only the server knows. And I haven't had the opportunity to talk to that person about it because it passes. When things like that happen at my job, it just happens and it passes. So that's my weekly rant about my job. You'll probably hear me talk about that every now and then. And Jared, my brother, can speak on it as well because he and I have worked together for a while now. It's always a fun environment to be in, certainly around the servers, because we have that common ground and that commonality in terms of like how these residents behave or whatever we have to endure together. But he and I have that separate idea because we're just so like-minded, where that we'll just look at each other and we're thinking the same thing. But yeah, ultimately, yeah, this episode has really come down to management, whether it's managing your emotions, your time, your effort in the sense of the NBA. But I look forward to next episode, because on next week's episode, I'm going to be talking about something that kind of combines the worlds of sports and entertainment. We are planning on taking a trip somewhere. I won't say where yet because I want you to tune in the next episode, but it's something that I'm deeply passionate about. It's something my family is deeply passionate about. And I look forward to bringing that episode to you guys. So as we bring this episode to a close, I want to first off thank everybody again for stopping by and joining us here on the J Area Podcast. Again, you can find me at justjose_3 on platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, where I'll post short videos regarding this podcast, as well as fun little videos that I find funny and hopefully you guys find funny too. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. You can find it on Spotify and YouTube for our video episodes. Again, thank you guys. Much love, much appreciation. I look forward to the next episode. See you guys.